right. This is Josh. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 4:05 p.m. And so we are here to discuss the park stance on allowing teams or groups in phases lower than phase 3 to come over and participate in group activities, specifically the Crabs Whidbey Baseball Club. So how this will work right now, I have Olivia and then I have James. If you would like to comment, go ahead and shoot Doug a message, and he will put you down and we'll just go in order. Speaker, before you start giving your comment, please state your name, and we will go from there. So right now I have Olivia, and Olivia, you're up.
Okay, did that work?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, great. So I'm Olivia Batchelor. I am a co-president of the Whidbey Baseball Club. We have started practices in the last couple weeks since we got to phase 3. We have teams that definitely want to come over and play these boys. They've been working hard. We are ready to work hard to follow any rules that are set forth, whether that's temperature checking everybody, having all equipment needed, as hand sanitizer, cleaning bats in between, cleaning baseballs, all rules that would need to be followed. We will be ready to make sure that we do that. These boys they just want to play ball. If it means we have to have less spectators, we're willing to follow those rules. It's really hard when our island already is accepting anybody from any phase on the ferries, which means we have many people here throughout the week from different phases. So I'm frustrated that this might be the one place where we're being told no. Adult softball, there's no way to know how many of those people go to town during the week to work and come back. It's kind of the same situation. Or people on the playground, or people that are just using the park for any reason. I also know that other fields in our county are being used from teams from off island, including Oak Harbor High School baseball field, including Dan Porter Park. So I'm just hoping that you guys can discuss and truly we can figure out a way together to make it work where everybody can be safe, everyone can still have a good time, but still get these kids getting a little ball. So thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. Next up is James. James, do you have any public comment?
Yeah, I have a couple. I mean, my email pretty much summarized the reason for the talking about it, but I think one thing we should consider beyond what Olivia is saying is that the teams that we would be inviting over would be no lower than phase 2. And in phase 2 over town, I have a son who plays in the baseball club over there. And they've worked out their situations. I think there are 5 people to an activity, but they have a full team of kids practicing in the same facilities. So they're traveling about and they're doing their baseball activities. So, in this instance, I mean, they're already out at parks, at facilities, at clubs, doing this activity. And so those are the people we'd be inviting over. So at this point, there isn't anybody from phase 1. It's phase 2. And then hopefully they all go to phase 3 soon. But, those are the clubs we'd be playing. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Was there any more comment? Okay. And real quick before we get Don's comment, did any commissioners have any follow-up questions, I guess?
Yeah, Josh, this is Matt. Can I ask a question of James or Olivia?
Yes.
Yeah, James, can you rattle off the current list of teams coming from Snohomish or King County that are part of that league that would be coming over, where they are, wherever else?
Yeah, I mean, so what we did,
Snohomish County?
Snohomish and King is where they'd be coming from. So what we did this year, because of COVID, you know how crowds work with MTYA Association. We're an independent club, so we pick and choose who we play. But when this situation occurred, you know, we all stopped, right? All stopped all the planning phase and all that kind of stuff. And so now the teams that we'll be playing is we're communicating with clubs and seeing who has time, who's still together and who's available. But Snohomish and King is where the counties are.
Is there any, not a team from Anacortes or anywhere in Skagit County, Mount Vernon, or any place?
No, not currently. I mean, currently we have games set up with Babe Ruth teams from Oak Harbor and Coupeville. But no, we haven't gone as far as North or Skagit. No, just more because of the distance. And the other issue with the boat now is sinking down to one boat. That's also be a concern with teams coming over as well. So
sure, okay,
negotiate.
Thanks.
Yeah, all right.
I have a question. You spoke about how your son's going over and practicing with some of those teams. Do you have any insight as to how they're running their practices, even though they're in phase 2?
I do. I know what his. So right now, since they're in phase 2, they don't get any games. So they're all practices. So his club in particular has a facility indoor, and then they do some stuff outdoors. They can get fields to practice on as well. So are you asking? I mean, that's what they do. But are you asking like safety protocols, things like that, or?
Yes. I just I'm trying to wrap my head around how they're making this happen while adhering to the phase 2 guidelines.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I haven't visited, but the coach is pretty proactive about. So there's a couple things I guess we should talk about. The club my son belongs to, it's an actual business. So it's not a charitable organization. So like us, we're the Crabs, so we're a 501. And so they run under the guise of a actual full-fledged business. So what they do is like when they're indoors, they're using masks. They're doing the sanitizing things. They're keeping the distance. But also, since it's an athletic event, the coach is very mindful of. He's concerned about them wearing a mask while they're doing an athletic event, right? So what they do inside is they do some non-cardio activities inside, and when they need to do the outside or the cardio stuff, they move outside and they keep the 6 distance apart. On the field, for baseball, most players, you have a catcher near a batter. If there's a base runner, you have the base runner. So they do things like that whereas the base runner and they have a fielder. But it's limited in the game itself. But they're not, like I said, they're not playing. They have so many coaches, and they have 5 players per coach, and they would go with that kind of setup.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so all right. So, Dawn, go ahead and comment.
My comment is that our field, we're blessed to have the parking spots the way they sit. And if the concern is that we're going to have people in the bleachers, we could just have the Parks Department remove the bleachers, not have parents get out of their car, ask that the spectators stay in their car, or, back their trucks up so that they can sit in the back of their pickup trucks, not go near the kids. That would maintain the 6-foot distance. That would be safe enough to watch their child from a safe distance. There wouldn't be any communication. They could be far enough. There's the whole line up to the playground where they could park. There's the whole line along the field, and nobody would get hurt. Nobody would be in distance where anybody could transfer anything. They would still be able to use the bathrooms, but there's lots of people using the bathrooms. There's homeless people using the bathrooms that I'm sure are not clean by any means. So that was my comment, saying that it would be unfortunate not to let them play just because they could come over, use the facility, and not create a ruckus with transmitting anything.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Any commissioners have any follow-up questions for that?
Yeah, Josh, this is Matt. Can I just ask a question of Tom real quick?
Yeah.
You bet.
Tom, you online?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're only talking about I don't know the number, but the field that backs up to the old maintenance facility. That's the only field that we're using, not over at the high school, not either the one that's on the other side for anything at all, right?
Yeah, the Crabs play on field 3. That's the only field the Parks District has with 90-foot bases, and they're set at 80. Yeah.
And can you remind me, is there, behind the dugouts, is there solid wall or is it just chain link?
It's just chain link. And okay. What typically happens is on the first base side, there is a retaining wall, a sitting area above that retaining wall, another retaining wall, and in past years, cars would line up all along the whole first base side. They would basically park up there on the hill. So it's elevated, and everybody would set up their chairs up on that hill anyway, and then kind of down the left field line as well. So there's quite a bit of room around that field being elevated. People would also sit out below the picnic shelter by the playground on the hill and watch from over there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Next public comment would come from Sky. Sky, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. What I've had to chew over this in my head for quite a few days now and look on both sides. And what's really struck with me is that we're doing this for the kids. And if this is our reasoning, if the reason that we are truly choosing to get these kids out on a field is because of the kids, then we should also be willing to take as many extra precautions as we can to ensure that nothing happens so that these kids can continue to play baseball. I love sports, and it is frustrating as hell to know that it's just not as possible right now. I look at I've gone through the protocols of like Babe Ruth and Pony League because the Crabs doesn't have a direct affiliation. And I would love to see an outline that specifically states this is what we can expect when we see a game. There's the difference to me of somebody coming across on the ferry and a baseball team coming across is we're inviting them. We are saying as a community that we are okay with inviting a large group of people from an area that we know they shouldn't be practicing at. And we know that because when we were in phase 2, we weren't practicing. It's really tough. And I leaned both ways, but my brother-in-law, who's my age, 44 years old, him and my sister, their whole family contracted COVID, and my sister had to drop him off at the ICU, the front door for the ICU up in Bellingham, without knowing if she'd ever see her husband again. And my two nephews saying, "Don't die, Daddy," when he's having to go in there. And so I know for some people, they don't think that there's that much of a risk, but I had to experience this in a different realm. And I would hate for anybody that is related to this baseball team to have to go through that. And I would hope that we would do whatever we could. We would go above and beyond for these kids and do that. There are currently basketball practices that are running at the high school. My son shows up to it. First thing that happens is he gets checked for his temperature, and there are 5 questions that get asked of him if he's been in contact with anybody. Do you have you been experiencing anything? Every single time. Yesterday he showed up, he was over 100 degrees. So then we had to wait 10 minutes and see if he calmed down. And then he was back to normal. But just some of the simple protocols that could be put in right now, and there's no reason we aren't. We should be doing that for the kids and for the sake of having baseball. Because if for some reason something happens and there is another bit of an outbreak on the island, we go back to phase 2, and then there's not going to be anything. So we need to really tread lightly. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sky. Did any commissioners have any follow-up?
Doug, I have a quick question for Sky, please. Sky, you said, did I understand, does the Babe Ruth team have an outline that you were asking for?
So I went online to look up to see if nationally Babe Ruth as an organization has an outline for how games are. And they do. So like their protocols for games are no more than 2 kids in a dugout at once. All the other kids have to be outside the fence, 6 feet apart. Anytime you're not on the field of play, you have to have a mask on. It's just like let's take what's already out there. I know it's inconvenient, and I know like playing with a mask isn't great, but at the same time, like I saw a picture just yesterday of Mike Trout running around the bases with a mask on. So like it's a little bit inconvenient, but it seems like these are such small sacrifices to be able to attain the goal, which is kids playing baseball.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, were there any other questions from you during the public comment?
None here, it's Matt.
So we will go ahead and close the public comment. And did anybody on the board have anything they would like to say or discuss real quick regarding this?
Yeah, just maybe a point of clarification.
Yes.
There was when Chris asked the question of James about the nature of practices in a phase 2 county, and then the question came up about in Sky's comment about whether you can or can't practice. So the rule for phase 2, as I've read it, is that you can practice outdoors, and the way you do for a youth sports team that has greater than 5 people on it, and you do it by maintaining separation between players and limiting the size of a group in a single group on the field to 5. So my belief is, and I've seen it a couple different times with a couple practices over in Snohomish County where they're in pods of 5 players. Those players are separated. Then there's another group of 5 players in a pod, outfielders doing this, infielders doing that, pitchers and catchers doing that over here, that kind of thing. So they are practicing, and they're doing it under those guidelines, which are the state guidelines for phase 2. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.
Just my 2 cents.
Sorry, go ahead.
If you take it, my 2 cents, I'm the guy on the ground seeing what's going on. I've seen more out of state license plates this year than I've ever seen. We've been well over 50 kids on the playground multiple times, especially when, we get 70 plus. It's an absolute rush on the playground. And from what I've seen, I'm more worried about getting infected from other areas than bringing 12 baseball players over, for a doubleheader. I think your distancing on a baseball field is way better than the playground, the skate park, the basketball court. That's what we see, day to day. The pickup game on Saturdays, 30 to 40 people. The ultimate frisbee, 20 plus on Sundays. So we've got drop-in groups that are utilizing our facility on the weekends. Again, we're not policing any of it, and we don't know where any of those people are from. Chances are they work off island, or they're coming over to see their college buddies, or whatever it may be. But there is an awful lot of transmission from phase 2 areas utilizing our park. And this is just part of it. I kind of recommended to Doug when we talked about this that, do we put a sign up at the playground that if you're phase 2, you shouldn't be recreating on our playground? It kind of goes along the same guidelines. The other thing this is going to impact is high school sports. If we're saying no phase 2, then, that's going to cut out any of the teams coming from town that are in our league coming over here to play any contests. So, this decision is not just impacting now, but, as we get closer to the high school seasons and the fall soccer season and all the other seasons, it's going to impact all those decisions as well.
Thanks, Tom. Okay. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, so let's go ahead. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I was thinking about Tom's comment. You know, as I'm thinking about this in terms of the variables in the equation, when you're talking about pickup soccer, or you're talking about, you know, ultimate, or you're talking about one of those type, you know, even the flying club, RC flying club or whatever. You're talking about a lot of variables that are not controlled. You know, there's not one at the gate, to Doug's point. There's not one doing any kind of contact tracing. There's not anyone maintaining a list of, you know, people, names and phone numbers and email addresses and that kind of thing. And that's, you know, we've been in that pattern now for a little while anyway in phase 3. In this particular case, to this particular request, to me, there are a lot fewer variables. You know, a club is going to come for a defined period of time on a defined day, and then they're going to be gone. During the time that they're there, we will have a roster of the names and addresses and email addresses and phone numbers of each individual that's present. You know, they're going to be arriving at the park generally as a group and departing as a group. So if we wanted to implement some kind of controls, like screening questions, like a temperature screen, like, you know, verifying masks or whatever, if, you know, that's something that's much easier than if you're doing a pickup that people are streaming in and out over a period of 5 hours or whatever. And the group of people who are going to be in attendance, not necessarily the competitors, but the people who might be in attendance, friends, family, are also coming in a group. Also, you know, are people we could, or the club could communicate with as a distinct group to say, here's the rule. You got to be 6 feet apart on the baselines. You got to have a mask on. You got to stay in your cars. You got to, whatever rules we would implement. Again, that's with a defined group of people that we can communicate with and that we can contact trace on. So to me, there are a lot fewer variables in doing something like this than in the things that we are already doing today, or allowing to be done in the parks. So, you know, my general feeling, and the part of me, as I would imagine many people are, you know, that you can argue both sides of this. To me, that's the part of the calculus that weighs in on the side of allowing the gameplay, is that it's something that I think we could contain. And if we do have an event, we can contact trace backwards from it, you know, and then take the appropriate actions.
I have a comment sort of following up on what Matt said. Thinking about when Governor Inslee first started the safe reopen plan, and we all went into phase 1. Golf courses were also allowed to reopen under extremely specific rules. And how that happened is because the golf courses, or let me back up. The governor did not reach out to the golf courses and say, you can reopen if you do these things. The golf courses went to the governor and said, these are all the things that we can do to ensure safety. If we do all these things, can we reopen to this extent? So sort of following up on what Matt is saying, I think that I would like to see what the club is willing to do specifically to ensure safety, rather than us creating the rules.
And I would just say to that, I think we heard, and I can't remember, forgive me, but Doug's got the notes and we can go back. But I'm pretty sure when Olivia led off, she indicated that, at least from her perspective, the club was willing to do a range of things like the things that we've kind of talked about. So to me, if we decided to go ahead with it, I think there would be things that each one of us, commissioner-wise, and maybe the staff as well, would say we need to at least ensure X or Y or Z. And, maybe it starts with some template, like was mentioned earlier, with the rules coming from a national organization like Babe Ruth or Cal Ripken or one of those, or not. But I think that it sounded like, anyway, that the club would be willing to do those kinds of things. I don't think any of them would be too burdensome, given the potential benefit, the gameplay benefit. So, yeah, to me, I think it's somewhere in the middle there. I think we have a template from a national organization. We have the club raising their hand and saying yes or no. And then we have individual inputs from commissioners that say, I think it's really important, based on my experience or based on whatever, that we do X or Y or Z, temperature measurement, contact tracing, screening, wipes, hand sanitizer. So
I just think Dawn had some good suggestions. Everybody was making some very good suggestions that I would like to see incorporated.
So I believe the template's been made. We're going to start playing our softball league on Friday night. We've got 4 teams that are going to be playing. Why don't we follow the exact same rules for our own league? We can't guarantee everybody on every team lives on the island, and we can't guarantee every player doesn't work in town. And so they're in phase 2 potentially just as much as these few kids we're bringing over here for a weekend doubleheader. It's good enough. But the rules are made for our league. We can follow them, and it's done. But they are coming over here.
Well, but I would say, Doug, that this particular case, at least if anybody else has found it, I haven't found it. You can't, in the rules, the state rules, cover every possible situation, obviously. This particular specific situation, a team from a phase 2 county playing a game in a phase 3 county, is not specifically addressed in the rules, unless somebody else has found that. You can look at rules for phase 2 teams recreating in a phase 2 county. It says you can practice under these terms, you can't play games, but that's not always being directly followed. King County, for example, Seattle City Sports Leagues are playing some games. I found a couple of references to that. So, but those rules are specific. This particular question is not specifically addressed. It's an interpretation that we have to make. So that to me is the difference.
Okay.
And I would say that's another, to me, sorry, Jess, that's another good question and a good point that I think is worth just at least mentioning. So the rule on phase 2 travel says, again, limit to non-essential travel within proximity of your home, as Doug said, but travel for outdoor recreation purposes is permitted. So again, it's not a specific, word for word. It's an interpretation. So it says you can recreate outdoors. In fact, you're encouraged to recreate outdoors, including camping. And so in this case, you're traveling for outdoor recreation. So to me, that's again an area for interpretation. It's not specifically called out in the rules. They are encouraging it on one hand, and they don't specifically allow it on another hand. So again, open to me to interpretation.
So the governor does have a hotline where these questions can be asked. So Matt, I loved all of the ideas you threw out. Dawn threw out great ideas. Krista brought up wonderful points, and Tom shared his observations. And what it comes down to as elected officials sanctioning something that we believe, that is, from what we're understanding from the rules, is not something that we have the power to sanction. The governor is the one who has set the rules. So how do we have the right as elected officials who took an oath of office to override the governor when our oath of office clearly says we will uphold?
Yeah, my read on that, Jennifer, that we're not, because these are not specifically detailed in the rules, that we are making an interpretation of the gray area between rules and the governor's order. We're not overriding, in my opinion, and maybe you see it differently, but in my opinion, we're not overriding anything that specifically, we're not trying to play a game in a phase 2 county. We are interpreting the rules, and that interpretation is, to me, on our shoulders because there's not an explicit guidance.
But there is a conduit to get guidance.
Sure, and maybe we say we're going to ask the question and we'll reconvene as soon as we have an answer.
It's interesting because I think the difference is that when you've got people coming, let's say people are coming to play recreational softball, you've got 2 adults coming, or people are coming here doing whatever, we're basically then as a department endorsing the okay for people to come here, for a group, for a body to come over. And I'm hesitant because you then open the floodgates, I think, to a myriad of other people requesting, saying, well, if this is good for them, why is it not good for us? And the bigger picture about, and Sky spoke to it really well, once you're impacted by this in a negative way, it becomes serious all of a sudden. And we can get caught up in a lot of different arguments. I for one, love baseball. I want the kids to play. But I keep coming back to this logical part, and the logical part being, if you were to ask someone, should we bring a busload of kids or a large group of a body of people to Whidbey Island and have them conglomerate with another group and then send them back? Is that logical? And I struggle with that. I struggle with that big time. Yes, I know there's ways to make that safe. Yes, I know people do it regardless, and they're not following maybe a regulation. But it seems that we have a duty in our positions as well to look out for the greater whole. And if one of those particular players then goes home and their grandmother or somebody in their family passes from it, it's a whole different picture. And if we were in a place where other counties' numbers looked better and we were headed in the right direction, but that's not what's happening. You need only go to any news station at any given time, and the numbers are not headed in the right direction. And I think that would be we'd be talking about something in a completely different manner. It's my 2 cents.
And also just a little bit more, it's not like the kids don't have other kids to play with, right? They can play with Oak Harbor and Coopville. And Island County is not the only county that is in phase 3. Are there baseball teams in other counties in phase 3 who could be invited to come and play? Or could our kids travel to those counties and play there?
I am. Yeah. I think if everybody's good on their comment in this discussion, we can go ahead and put it to a vote. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Like I said, what about the idea of us formally requesting guidance from the state?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would be for that and okay with that.
I mean, I would rather than just vote and then potentially just stop talking about it, I'd rather at least make that request if that's something that we think we can get an answer on quickly.
Okay, commissioners, is there anybody opposed to voting on this today, right now?
No,
Okay.
we can vote.
All right. So would somebody like to make a motion?
So I would like to make a motion that we proceed as we currently are with denying out of area phase 2, phase 1 counties coming to play.
Okay, all in favor?
We need a second.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. And an amendment to that motion is that Doug will reach out to the governor's office for clarification on how we can proceed.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Jennifer Cox, aye.
Krista Lord.
Matt, I say nay.
Eric Chokinen, aye.
Sorry, that was mixed up. So 3 ayes, is that correct?
No, that's Matt, nay.
Okay. Eric?
I said aye. Krista Lorsher, aye.
And Eric's an aye. Hello? Josh, nay. Okay. So for now, your directive stays in place, and no phase 2 teams allowed to play games in our park at this time. Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. If there's no other business, I will. Okay. I'll go ahead and conclude. Oh, sorry.
I just want to confirm that the next meeting is on Wednesday, the 15th, correct?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I will call. Nope, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 4:59 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.